Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Gourmet Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. We're joined alongside Emilio in Tennessee. We got Tim in Green Bay here to talk some Green Bay Packers. I was telling the guys offline, we got a lot to cover, a lot to talk about. And, of course, someone's just going to jump in here and interrupt us the last second. You know, just always late to everything, always just, you know, kind of too cool for school.
How many times are you going to come to my press conference late?
Everybody, welcome to the show, Mr. Jacob Beer. Jacob, oh, wait. All right. What's up, Jacob? How you doing, man?
Here's a guy firing.
Are we live or am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah. Oh,
No, we're live. We're live, sir. We're live.
Oh.
I repeat, we're live.
Be a crackhead.
No, I'm not.
That was not me. That was not me.
He said, "No, I'm not." Everything good,
Hi, guys.
Jacob?
Yeah, everything's great. Just is there anything to talk about?
No, I think we've got a few things. Yeah. Did you have something on your mind? You want to hit something else, or?
Well, I was just gonna highlight that yesterday, me and Tim were ready to go for the pod. Unfortunately, we forgot that there was none.
ready to
We were
go.
reading the chat. We were reading the chat too. You guys were like, it's funny watching like half the chat realize, oh, there's no show tonight. It's tomorrow. And then they still were in there talking smack to each other for like 20, 30 minutes. But anyways, had I been on yesterday, obviously there's the Jaire news. In addition to that, did you guys see that Robert Rochelle was signed by the Cowboys and
Nice.
looking to revamp that cornerback room? I didn't realize that, one, he was a 4th-round draft pick. That kind of blew past my brain. And he played on 41% of special team snaps for the Packers last year. So he had more of an impact, I think, than a lot of people maybe realized. Was it surprising to you guys that with all the cornerback issues and the way that I thought he graded out somewhat decently, are you surprised we let Robert Rochelle walk away?
I'm not really.
super surprised. Sorry, Clay. Go ahead.
I'm not really surprised because of Kalen King and Kamal Hadden. I think they probably had a higher draft grade on both of those guys, believe it or not. I don't think they were expecting Kamal Hadden to come available, as I believe it was the Chiefs that cut him loose. He was a 6th-round pick, but just because they took him in the 6th don't mean that Goody didn't have a much higher grade on him, and the board didn't fall the way he wanted. For me, I'm not like crazy about Rochelle. I was more of a fan of Corey Ballantyne than Rochelle personally. That was one that I was like, I'd like to have kept him around because I felt like he just brought a little bit more level of physicality. But what about you guys? Go ahead, Tim. Sorry, man.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I agree. And, Rob Rochelle was one of my favorite special teamers. Like Jacob was saying, played almost half the special team snaps for us. But I wasn't that shocked that they let him go because he didn't play a lot of corner for us. And I think we were looking to get a little younger, faster, stronger at corner. And then plus, the acquisition of Nate Hobbs helped during free agency. So not totally caught off guard by that. And then I would probably co-sign your point too, Clay, that I think if I would have kept anyone, it would have been Ballantyne, probably over Rob Rochelle.
Right, and I think that all great points. I also think that, you
also think that Travis Glover could have played corner, right?
Well, that's an option. That's an option, depending on if I got my hands, in updating his score there. But I would say that we also have, a lot of safeties. So, I mean, you can look at it and say, hey, I don't need maybe one extra corner if I have an extra safety that I can throw in at nickel or I can do something like that. So maybe you're looking at it. I mean, down the line roster number, you got to get to 53. It is tough, but congrats on him. You got to keep going, keep playing.
Good stuff. All right, let's dive in. Since we're talking corner, let's jump into the topic that we're going to lead off with here. We finally get to have some complete closure with this Jaire Alexander thing. I want to make sure I'm very, very clear here. In no way, shape, or form is this segment geared towards, hey, let's make Goody out to be an idiot. It ain't geared toward let's try to demonize Jaire Alexander. The point is to try to take a detailed look at, okay, how did they get to this point? Let's try to learn something and see exactly what went wrong. And again, it's not about putting blame on anyone. It's just simply, here's what happened. Here are the facts. And here's kind of Jaire's side of the story. And also we've talked about the Packers side of the story this entire time. All right. So Here we go. Jaire Alexander's father sounds off on his son's negotiations with the Packers. It's going to be a little bit lengthy. I'm going to try to pause in between and get your all's take on each of these points here. But let's just jump right into it. I put the end of the Jaire Alexander saga has officially arrived as he is signed with the Ravens. As we close this chapter in Packers history, let's recap Jaire's side of how things ended in Green Bay. So Landis Alexander, for those of you who don't know, went on ESPN Wisconsin yesterday, did a quick interview, about a 15-minute interview, right? And he posted on X between June 13th and June 18th of this year. He elaborated on during ESPN Wisconsin's interview, focused on three main issues: the Packers contract offer, the handling of Jaire's 2024 injuries, and misrepresentation about Jaire's willingness to negotiate. Below is a detailed breakdown of his remarks, organized by theme with direct quotes and context. All right. So number one, the Packers contract proposal and the lack of guaranteed money. All right. Landis Alexander, obviously Jaire's father, was highly critical of the Packers' proposed contract restructure, emphasizing that it offered no guaranteed money for 2025, which he deemed unacceptable for a player of Jaire's caliber. His specific comments included this. On the lack of guarantee, he said, quote, "The Packers sent over a proposal and it was like a non-proposal. To not have any guarantee in there was where we had the issue." Okay, that was part of that interview. He also said, quote, "Can't play on a contract with any guarantees." And another quote he had was he wasn't willing to play for damn near free. All right. On the offer structure, Landis described the offer as foolish to take, suggesting it was heavily incentive-laden with minimal base salary. One ex-post from Titletown Talks, citing Landis, claimed the Packers offered a $4.3 million deal, all incentive-based, with zero in guaranteed money. All right. While Landis did not confirm the exact figure in his own words, he endorsed the sentiment that the offer was insultingly low. Now, implications: Landis clarified that Jaire was very willing to structure, I repeat, he was very willing to restructure his existing deal, which had a $16.5 million non-guaranteed base salary for 2025, but the Packers' proposal relied on a per-game roster bonuses and other incentives, effectively tying Jaire's earnings to his availability each week. That was reported by the Acme Packing Company on June 14th. This structure, as Landis explained, meant Jaire would have to prove his health and performance weekly to earn his pay, a risky proposition for a 28-year-old with a recent injury history, 7 games played in 2024. He argued that such a deal was unreasonable for a former All-Pro, stating, quote, "He knows he's worth more, but he also knows he's been hurt." The lack of guarantees contrasted sharply with market standards for top cornerbacks such as L'Jarius Sneed's 2024 contract with the Titans, which is 4 years, $76.4 million with $55 million guaranteed. Now, it doesn't specify if it's practical guarantee, actual guarantee, but you get the gist of it. Landis's comments suggest Jaire sought at least partial guarantee to align with his proven value when healthy. Okay, now I want to say this. He did specifically say if it had been a $10 million deal, they state, he said $8 million. He said, heck, $6 million, we wanted to be in Green Bay. So if they would have offered him the $6 million contract that Baltimore offered, he would have stayed in Green Bay, is basically what it's coming down to. Now, he's not saying it needed to be fully guaranteed, but the Packers basically said zero guarantee. Now, I know there's a lot of people, when we talk about this, and we'll get your all's take up to this point, and then we'll continue on with the article. I know there's many people, it's like, it needs to be incentive-based, it needs to be production-based, all that. So I imagine most people will probably agree with how the Packers handled it. You guys know where I stood at it. At the end of the day, I was thinking, man, if you can do $10 million guarantee and make him earn the other $7 million, I think it'd be worth it to bring him back. That was just me personally. So with that being said, let's pass it around. We'll start with you this time, Tim. I know you've been a big Jaire fan. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. I apologize, but I do want to get your take before you hear anybody else's, man. How do you feel about what we've learned here through Jaire's father? And again, this is Jaire's father's take. I have no reason to believe he's lying. It seems like everything kind of lines up with what he's saying here in terms of how the Packers do.
Things could be a lot worse. We could be Bears fans, right? I don't know, man. This seeing all this now, you're going to get, obviously he signed over there in Baltimore, so we're going to start to get some more information. I'm sure we'll hear even more in the days and weeks to come about some of these specifics. But yeah, it is kind of interesting that his pops is kind of taking the lead here, kind of speaking almost like he's kind of his representation. And in a lot of ways he is. I mean, that's family, that's his son. So He has every right to discuss what he wants. I think a lot of this points back to the fact I keep thinking about locker room clean out after the season last year. And I think maybe both sides just kind of knew that they were going to be parting ways, honestly. I don't think maybe either one of the sides made, super strong efforts to mend the relationship and, see a future in Green Bay for Jaire. So that could explain why there were no incentives added to or the contract was heavily incentive laden for an offer, nothing guaranteed at all. I think that's kind of borderline insulting to a veteran player, if you ask me, that you're not going to guarantee at least, part of the contract or part of the money. And we see what he got there in Baltimore. So I think it makes sense. We'll learn a little bit more here as we go on, but I'm just glad it's over, honestly, at this point. I don't know about how you guys feel, but I'm just kind of ready to move on and move forward. And clearly so was Jaire and so were the Packers. So it's kind of how this went down.
Yeah, Holmes MD1 said, I listened to Josh Pops on KBN. The man sounded honest and genuine in explaining his perspective. Green Bay must not have wanted him. That would hurt my feelings as well. Emilio, the thing that really stood out to me as that whole interview was taking place and reading everything in between was the initial report by Rob Demovsky where they said Green Bay does not want him back. And fans just absolutely attacked Rob, saying, oh, he's just trying to run Ja out of town. They don't like Ja. The local beat reporters don't like Ja, on and on and on. Rob had it right. It seemed like the Packers were ready to move on from Ja. And, hey, let's throw one little, here you go, bub. If he accepts it, that's great news for the Packers. If not, we're ready to move on with Carrington and everyone else. But
right.
Your thoughts so far, man?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. What was kind of sitting on my mind was if he's like vet minimum, don't they have to give him, some type of guaranteed money to get him to vet minimum? So even if it was $1 million and change, he'd be losing out on $3 million or whatever. But reading what Ron said here, no, the NFL collective bargaining agreement does not allow for no guaranteed money for 7-year vets. Mm-hmm. So
some of it must have been guaranteed in the offer,
right? So
that's where you get into the practical or actual. I think he's talking about actual and not practical.
Okay, yeah, because that's where I was like, some of it has to be guaranteed, right? So obviously it's not zero. But
let me explain real quick what I mean by that. With what Ja's dad was saying was it was going to be roster bonus. That is considered guaranteed,
right?
In just layman's terms, all right, that's guaranteed money that if you're on the roster, you're guaranteed that money. But the players look at it like, if I'm not healthy, I'm not in the lineup, I'm not guaranteed that money. That's where Pat McAfee absolutely roasted Ian Rappaport for saying guaranteed money. And he said, is it really? He said, well, it's practical. And Pat McAfee lit his ass up like, that's not guaranteed. That's how the lingo is there. So within the CBA, when you talk about no guaranteed money, I guarantee you that falls under that category of guaranteed money. Go ahead, man.
I see what you're saying now. Yeah, because I mean that's obviously you gotta go get that money, but it's just tough to look at it. We look at it. Hey, we didn't pay Aaron Jones that extra $1 million, right? We've had a couple of these close ones where we're a little bit off, but hey, we tried. Aaron Jones was older with injuries. He kind of played through some of them. He kind of wasn't on the field for some of it. So, but I do think that it's another thing about Ja. I think we might have started, but Hafley wasn't happy with him, right? In some maybe his plays there. But right here, I'm sorry, Ron also said, I remember Hafley showing some frustration with trying to game plan when he never knew if Ja would play. I think it was a big reason they decided to move on last year. To that point, Greg Cosell was talking with Ross Tucker, and they were saying that, like, Ja is more of like a keyer and a cluer is what he had said, saying like Ja's going to kind of eyeball the quarterback, play the triangle on the receiver, and want to jump those routes, kind of play out just a little bit outside of his realm or whatever. And you can't trust a guy all the time when he's playing like that.
No, you can't. Jacob, what you got, big dog?
Yeah, I think we learned two major things in the last 24 hours. I think one is that Packer fans drastically overvalued what Jaire Alexander's worth was. And I think Jaire Alexander drastically overvalued what his worth was in the eyes of the NFL. it is shocking.
You think
to
God
me.
never farted?
It's shocking to me that he was able to get signed for $6 million, whether or not it's fully guaranteed or not. To me, I think again we can deduce that from that the Packers didn't want him back. They didn't, and I think it's very clear that even to the point where I think that they could have offered him. You talk about $10 million guaranteed. They could have offered him probably $5 million guaranteed with 3 in incentives, and he sounds like he would have been back. They probably could have offered him 2 guaranteed with 4 incentive, and he would have been back. To me, it's very clear that I think the Packers were just done. That they saw the writing on the wall. They saw what they had. They saw the product that they got from the investment they made. The ROI wasn't worth anything what they thought it would be. And I think that mentally, like Ron commented on, I think that they just realized that he could be too far gone as far as being a cancer in the locker room, just with certain things he had done. And I think that in their eyes, they saw cut bait. We've got a new crop of guys coming in. This is a business. We're nowhere near. I mean, I couldn't believe how far away from that $17 million per year, you know what I'm saying, that the contract had him under, that teams weren't even willing to sniff a quarter of that barely. That's crazy. So, yeah, I think we have to read the tea leaves, and probably a lot of these, like you said, the press conferences, there's probably more truth in a lot of them than we wanted to believe at the time.
Yeah. And H.E. Soder says, reminder that the Packers training staff is more conservative. Job might get more games in Baltimore, but it could cost him something in the long term. I've been hearing this a lot. And this is something that's been talked about for the last decade, how conservative the Packers training staff is. This is a new training staff. It's a brand new training staff, right? And on top of that, if you think the Packers have been conservative, go say that to David Bakhtiari. Because David Bakhtiari's whole qualm was he was not ready to come back. He got pissed because the coaches and the training staff were trying to push him back on the field when his knee wasn't ready. Lo and behold, they put him out on the field. It swells up like a balloon. And then basically his career is over. And listen, could it have been over if that hadn't happened? It's possible. But I'm not one that subscribes to the Packers training staff as conservative. Jordan Love played with 3 injuries last year. Christian Watson went back in against Chicago and tore his ACL when he wasn't ready to go back in because Romeo Doubs was sick. I respectfully disagree with that take. And I remember hearing about this in 2013. Man, it just seems like the Packers are always holding their players out, and then other teams are playing with players that are hurt and this and that. And I used to believe it. I don't believe it anymore. And again, when you change training staffs, who else can you blame? It sounds like it's kind of an organizational thing. And I'm not even saying it should be blamed as a negative. Oh man, they need to change the way they do stuff. I'm just simply saying I can't agree with that take anymore. You know what I mean? Because again, Kenny Clark. Why did Kenny Clark struggle last year, guys? He was hurt since week 1.
Right.
I mean, how many more examples do we need?
LBM played with a broken thumb.
You know what I'm saying? And again, this isn't the only team that plays with injuries. The NFL, you got to play hurt, right? Yeah. So this isn't a knock against the training staff of the Packers going, they're doing things wrong. I'm just simply pointing out, I don't think they're as conservative as we have all convinced ourselves, myself included. That makes sense.
My knee.
And that's another example, ain't it? He went out there with a fractured leg, didn't he? They shot him up, and he was high as a kite after the game. So, man, anyway, all right. So let's move along here because there's some other key points I want to get to, including injury, by the way. But number 2 on this list, willingness to negotiate and misrepresentation. Landis vehemently disputed reports that Jaire was unwilling to take a pay cut or negotiate. You guys remember when that report came out that he was not willing to take a pay cut or renegotiate? His dad's saying that was absolutely untrue. So I know we say, man, the players' side, they get their PR team out there and try to, paint this picture like their client's perfect, right? But on the flip side, I guarantee we know that report didn't come from the Packers or didn't come from Jaire. It came from the Packers, right? So they were kind of playing a little tug of war there as well. It says framing the issue as the Packers' refusal to offer a fair deal rather than Jaire's inflexibility. His key statements include on Jaire's willingness to restructure. This is not true. In response to claims that Jaire refused to negotiate his contract. Nobody ever said he wouldn't take a pay cut. He wasn't willing to play for darn near free is a better quote, is what he said on X. He absolutely wanted to stay in Green Bay. They insulted him by giving him no guarantee, all incentive-based deal that only a fool would sign. It was never about refusing to take a pay cut or thinking he is worth more. Now, this goes back to kind of the Aaron Rodgers take. You guys know there was a lot of conversation on X about this throughout this whole process, was how Aaron was talking about how they mistreat older players on their way out the door. Again, you'd rather get rid of a player 1 year too early rather than 1 year too late. You could say it's cold-hearted, whatever. That's the business of football, man. And that's why I do not hold these players like I don't try to convince anyone or convince myself that a player is a bad person because they hold out for more money, because it goes both ways. A team's going to cut a player with 2 years left on their contract if it makes sense for them to cut him. A player is going to hold out with 2 years left on his contract if it makes sense for him to hold out because he's got leverage. I just kind of try to see both sides of it there. Here's the context and rebuttals. Landis was responding to media narratives, including reports from ESPN's Peter Schrager and others, suggesting Jaire rejected any pay reduction. He argued these claims misrepresented Jaire's position, emphasizing that Jaire was open to a reduced salary if it included some guaranteed money. He refuted the idea that Jaire thought he was worth more than the market, acknowledging Jaire's injury history, but insisting the Packers' offer was disrespectful. This aligns with earlier reports from May 27, 2025, indicating Jaire wanted to stay in Green Bay and was open to a reworked deal. That was reported by the Acme Packing Company on May 27th. And then Landis comments suggest the Packers' proposal was perceived as a lowball offer, undermining Jaire's contributions as a former CB1 and two-time Pro Bowler 2020 and 2022. And I want to say this, the contract you're trying to sign a player to has nothing to do with what you've done in the past. You're trying to project what they're worth in the future, right? So that's where I kind of side with the team in that regard. Don't make a hill of beans that you were a two-time. I'm so sick of hearing two-time All-Pro or whatever it is, two-time Pro Bowler. Boys, we're talking about that was what, 5 years ago when his first Pro Bowl.
Yeah, he was a two-time Pro Bowler. Was he a Pro Bowler at any point when Jordan Love was our quarterback? You know what I mean?
No.
Right. Exactly. Injury management and trust issues. Landis alleged the Packers mishandled Jaire's 2024 injuries, a shoulder issue and a hamstring strain that limited him to 7 games, further eroding trust during negotiations. His specific claims include, now I don't know if it gets into the PCL here, but I was going to try to find it because it's just talking about the shoulder injury and everything there. He confirmed, and I put a tweet out about this. I say confirmed, but his side of the story, Landis' side of the story was that Jaire told them something's not right with the knee. Something's not right. And they waited 4 more weeks before they did a test or they did a scope, and that's where they found out the PCL injury. So that sounded a lot like the David Bakhtiari situation to me. It was like, hey, you're fine. We'll get you back out there in a couple of weeks type thing. So that's just weird. It's a weird way to approach that because with Bach, it was the old training staff, and with Jaire, it was the new training staff, right? So I don't know if you guys got any thoughts on that. Jacob, I'll let you go first this time, man. Is there anything you want to add to that in terms of how we're handling injuries? I know we covered a lot there in the last few minutes.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because Ryan brought it up on his podcast, I believe, this morning, that it was a weird situation because, like you said, okay, well, the common denominator here over the last few years is, like somebody said in the comment, well, they treat people bad as they get older. Well, yeah, you're not going to have as much time, effort, money, and dedication to a player who's literally aging out of the position, the role that they play in a team. So to me, that just makes logical sense. Like, I feel like the people get a little too invested in emotions and loyalty and all that kind of stuff in a game that there's no loyalty. There's no, guarantees in NFL football. And I think that it is interesting from a medical standpoint, like Holmes is referencing here, that Ryan brought up on his pod that they had the same issues with the previous training staff. Remember, everybody wanted, because they were like, what's going on? We can't stay healthy. We can't stop having hamstring issues. People are tearing their pecs. They're doing all this kind of stuff. Everybody said, okay, maybe they're the issue then. So Goody, they fired the whole staff. Remember that? They fired the whole training staff. They bring in another staff. Immediately, it's the same type stuff. So I think they realized, okay, what's the common denominator here? It's that Ja maybe isn't wanting to play at certain times when possibly guys that are quote unquote experts medically are saying, dude, he's good to go. Like, medically, if he wants to push his body, he should be good to go. And then I think you probably do run into that parallel universe of having a guy like Aaron Rodgers says something. It's hard for other guys that get put into similar situations to just be like, oh, yeah, I got the same treatment Rodgers did. Where it's like, you're not in the same boat. You're not in the same conversation. Some random Joe Schmo that, made the 53, but wasn't quite, treated right in their eyes. I feel like that could be a little bit of a bleeding into certain issues where do you know what I'm trying to say? Like Rodgers had the ball rolling, and so everybody felt like, hey, I'm going to jump on that train. We can blame the brass. We can blame the front office because clearly it's not our fault. But I feel like that those situations like Bakhtiari, Rodgers, Jordy Nelson, Devontae, those were situations where those guys were great players for us, and we had to decide to make decisions. Whereas like a lot of these players that are bringing this up now, I don't know. I feel like they're trying to kind of make themselves to maybe throw the Packers under the bus to make themselves look a little better, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Holmes MD1. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I think with Ja, it's more probably the medical side than the age. I mean, he's 28, right? He's not getting any younger, but he's definitely not over, over and above that dirty 30 age that we all know exists in the NFL. I don't care what team you play for.
Right.
And honestly, it's kind of funny, Clay. You brought up the parallel or the comparison to how Bakhtiari's knee injury was handled. They had Big Dave go, I believe, week 1 in Chicago. That was the last game he played for us. We all remember the one-fingered salute to the Bears fans at Soldier Field. That was awesome. I believe Ja re-aggravated that knee in a game at Soldier Field against Chicago as well. So it's kind of an interesting coincidence maybe, but it certainly does look like at least at some point during last season, Ja did make an effort to go, and it might have caused, some more damage to that knee for all we know.
Yeah, for sure. Holmes MD1 says, from a medical standpoint, I agree with Clay. There may have been a strategic fumble in regards to diagnostics. He's also said direct visualization by arthroscopy. Is that how you say that?
Arthroscopy. Yeah, arthroscopic.
I always hear arthroscopic, so I've never heard it as
arthroscopy. You got to talk like a doctor.
That's right. Well, good luck trying to get me to do that. My God. Is a gold standard for world-class athletes. Ja's dad said they found a bunch of junk when they finally did the scope. No bueno. So,
I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Neither. Holmes went on to say the initial diagnostic study of choice is MRI, possibly with a word I can't pronounce, for meniscal issues, not menstrual, but meniscal issues. I would think these enormously wealthy teams would prefer diagnostic. So here's the thing, man. Like, you can't help. I don't want to say what I'm about to say. Damn it. I hate talking about stuff like this. They've got the money, they've got the funds, they got the resources. It almost makes you think sometimes they just go, let's don't go that far. Let's just get them back on the field. You know what I'm saying? Like they're worried they'll find something in there and then it will shut it down. I don't know, man. Maybe I don't know.
I don't think that's crazy to think,
That's the same reason I don't go to the doctor because they're going to be like, you got the cancer. I'll be like, I shouldn't have looked. I shouldn't have looked for it.
Oh, dude, my favorite thing is like, man, I tell you, I don't want to go into too much detail here because it'd get political, but last visit I had to the doctor, having some heart problems, blood flow problems, stuff like that, blood pressure, things like that. It's literally come in here, waste 3 hours, spend $600 and go, let's keep an eye on it. We'll see you back in 2 weeks. Awesome. All right. Well, great. We got nothing done today, and I'll see y'all in a few weeks. Sounds good. So WebMD, babies. I'm scared of WebMD. I'll put in WebMD and end up in a psych ward or something, man. It'll convince me I've got everything under the sun. So anything else on the Ja conversation? Emilio, anything else? You got quiet up there, man.
Yeah, I don't know, man. You're not saying it's varsity blues, right? But yeah.
I'm going to tear your arms off and beat you to death with them.
But no, I mean, it's tough for Ja, right? Go get your money, do your thing. But even, looking at the Ravens roster, here's their cornerbacks. Jalen Davis, Chidobe Awuzie, Marlon Humphrey, Bahal Cohn, Robert Longerbeam, Ruben Lowry, Keon Martin, Marquise Robinson, TJ Tampa, and Nate Wiggins.
Who?
I'm just saying, that's what if he doesn't even get a spot? They drafted Nate Wiggins last year. You know what I mean? Like, whatever, man. You gave it a shot. You tried to get your money. What if
Lamar's not going to let him cut Jaire? Stop it.
TJ Tampa.
Ja's going to become a wide
Tempo.
receiver. He's going to be going both ways at Ravens camp now.
We're going to let Mountain Man Pack send us home here as we move on to the next topic. He says, quote, "We're all going to die." That's it. End of quote. So
It's beautiful.
I think there's some truth to that. Let's
Not
move it
me.
along here. So not me. I'm going to live forever. So there was some offensive line talk and contract negotiation talk that hit today. Now, I want to hit this first, and for a specific reason. I don't know if this is the original Ricky that used to do this stuff. This guy's got over 30,000 followers. But you remember last year, Ricky, I don't know if it was Slick Rick Scoops. I thought it was called something else.
Dude's
But-
just calling shots left and right.
Bro, he was nailing it, right? So he puts this tweet out earlier today. It says the Packers are working on an extension for left tackle Rasheed Walker that they hope to have done before training camp, right? So you see this and you go, whoa, that's kind of out of left field because we had talked about Zach Tom top priority, this and that, right? So I just want to put out this information came from this specific tweet. People asked him in the comments, I think you're talking about Zach Tom. A couple people, I think you're talking about Quay Walker, right? Like, because there was a bunch of multiple sources that came out today that they are in contract talks with Quay Walker and Zach Tom. So if you've heard about Rasheed Walker potentially getting a contract extension, it could be true. It could be false. And Slick Rick Scoops here, Slick Ricky, might have gotten it wrong and gotten mixed up that it was Quay Walker. I don't know. He didn't respond to any of the questions in the comments, of course. That's convenient, right? Like just one question. Hey, no, I know for sure it's Rasheed Walker. That would have helped. But just wanted to put that out there. This, to the best of my knowledge, this is the only source that we have for Rasheed Walker being in contract talks with the Packers in terms of, them saying hoping to have it done before training camp. I'm sure they've offered something, right? But this sounds like they were trying to get something done. So again, don't know if this is true or not, but that's where it originated at. So as Dead Fish said, Quay is not a left tackle. Completely agree, Dead Fish. Quay is not a left tackle. I was just trying to make sense of it because
They do have the same last name.
They do have the same last name. So now let's get into the other contract stuff that broke today, and want to get your all's take on it. What I did was I had AI search through the interwebs. Let's hit this real quick. Austin Hardy with the super chat. Thank you, buddy. Did you watch the Goot interview on Cheesehead TV yesterday? We did. I know I did, Austin. I'll be honest with you, man. I don't like those type of interviews because they're softball questions and never get a damn thing answered we didn't know. That's why people tell me all the time, do interviews, man. Get so and so. Get so and so. We had Christian Watson's mom on the podcast. We had obviously the interview there with Tony Mandarich. That's fun because you're kind of hearing someone's story. But when you do an interview with a GM, did you guys learn anything that we didn't know? That's what I want to know. Did anybody learn anything we didn't know?
No.
That's why I don't typically tune into that stuff because it's like I know it's just going to be random giggling, and then nobody gets anything accomplished. That's the stuff that kind of drives me crazy. So if you guys know something that they said in there that was maybe, hey, this really jumped off the page, let me know. Chat, awesome, appreciate you.
Too old for this.
What did he say?
Just read it. You don't have to put it on the screen.
I don't want to pat you on the butt and you poop my hand. So
yeah, I'm not going to bash anybody publicly, but that is pretty funny. I remember Weird Al Yankovic. He was a big part of my childhood, actually. So Green Bay confirms they're in contract negotiations with Zach Tom and Quay Walker. Now, there's been multiple sources. Packer Wire hit on this. There was like 3 or 4 different people that came out and talked about they're in contract negotiations with Zach Tom and Quay Walker. Now, listen, we knew they were going to try to get some kind of deal done with Quay as soon as they declined the 5th-year option. What did Goody say? Yeah, he's in our future plans. But, just obviously they don't want to – he didn't say this, but they didn't want to pay the 5th-year option price. We knew they were going to try to extend Zach Tom as well. But here is what we've got here. According to multiple sources, the Packers in the contract negotiations with Zach Tom and Quay Walker. Let's dive into what we know. So what I did was said a interweb, AI, find every bit of information you can on this and compile it in a bullet form kind of article, and let's see what we come up with. Okay, so Zach Tom talks about his draft pick. In 2024, Tom emerged as one of the NFL's top right tackles. We know all that, blah, 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 blah. The article notes Tom's consistent participation in the 2025 offseason workout program, signaling his commitment despite ongoing contract talks. I know we've talked about that. Gutekunst's comments here lately said, Gutekunst stated, quote, "We've had really healthy conversations with Zach Tom about locking him up, and certainly that's something we'd like to do. This indicates active and positive negotiations." He acknowledged the time-consuming nature of extensions, saying, quote, "These things take time and they never happen very quickly. This suggests a deliberate approach to reaching a deal." Gutekunst praised Tom's character and performance. Quote, "He's been a really good player for us since the time he got here, done everything right by us. So hopefully we'll get there soon. This reflects confidence in Tom's long-term fit with the team." So strategic implications. Extended Tom is a priority due to his elite performance as a rising market for top offensive tackles. Penei Sewell's 2024 deal with the Lions was 4 years, $112 million, with $28 million average annual value. A new contract would would average 15 to 20 million annually, locking in a key protector for Jordan Love. If we get 15 to 20 annual, oh boy, what a deal that would be, right? The Packers' $49 million in 2025 cap space per over the cap, cited in related sources, provided flexibility to secure Tom before his value escalates further in free agents. We know the longer they wait, the more that's going to cost. Tom's extension aligns with the team's focus on building around a young, cost-controlled core, especially after freeing up $17.4 million by releasing Jaire Alexander. Seems like that money that was saved by Ja, good chunk of it's going to go straight into paying Zach Tom. And obviously Goody here of lately has been very vocal about, hey, we want to lock him up long term. So now we've gotten kind of confirmation, guys. I'll start with you this time, Tim. Tom, sounds like they're in deep conversations with Zach Tom. I think this is going to get done before training camp starts, especially with Tom showing up to training camp the way he did.
I hope it's done before the end of the week. Hopefully by tomorrow we get an answer, right? No, but in all seriousness, you're right. I think we've been waiting for this for a while, and you don't want to stretch this out too long. I mean, we're going into camp next month. So, yeah, I would think in the next, week or two, tops, they would probably have something solidified to keep him here for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Jake, got anything, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those situations where don't wait. We saw that situation with Love where you drag it on and all of a sudden the tag keeps rising and rising and rising. We know what Zach Tom is. We've basically known what he was since the day we got him in, and all of a sudden turn some heads. Fourth round guys like this don't come around too often. When they do, throw the freaking bag at him. Do it in a way where, like you said, maybe sooner than later, get as much, any bit of rising up that price or raising the price or doing any sort of drama. I don't want any holding out. I want any kind of nothing. I just want this to be done, inked away. We don't have to worry about it for a few years at least. I think just do it, give the guy what he's worth, and then let's move on fixing the rest of the 4 spots in that offensive line, making sure we have the best 5.
Absolutely. Let's get it done before training camp does, so you can just walk in, suit up, put the helmet on, and let's play. I mean, there's just no point. There's no point in waiting and drawing it out. And Clay, let me just shouldn't I ask you a question I don't know the answer to, but
oh no.
If would it be feasible if we needed to tag him or anything? Would that be a route that they would maybe want to go, or that tag's going to be $25 million anyway?
The tag's going to be high. Someone could probably help us out in the chat. I bet Drew D could do it. Drew, what would be the franchise tag price for Zach Tom, or anyone who wants to look that up for us?
Just wondering if that's an option. I don't want it to come to that point, right? But if they really can't get it done by training camp, put them on a tag, get it done by next year. I feel like that's something we can get taken care of, but break glass in case of an emergency kind of thing.
Yeah, for me, I think they want to stay away from it. Now, if they do that, in the past, what they've been able to do is franchise tag and then finish the extension and then have that franchise tag be a part of the guaranteed money. And
Gotcha.
Then you can actually move that franchise tag. You can move the 5th-year option around too, as we learned with Darnell Savage. Drew D says around $21.2 million. That's not a horrible number. So,
that's not terrible.
Yeah, if you can't get the deal done, they'll probably franchise tag him out.
Yeah, that's not a bad – I wouldn't be mad at that. I mean, if we get him for 20, I'm going to be happy. But that's not terrible if we still need to work something out.
Yeah, and Holmes has got a cross-check on there with Gemini Pro that says 25.1, so somewhere between 21 and 25, because it does go up. It'll go up next year, right? Yeah. So thank you, Drew, and thank you, Holmes, for looking it up. Appreciate that. So I don't know. How would you guys feel about that? Let's just hammer it out here. listen, you've got to choose either franchise tag him or let him walk in free agency. What would you rather do, Jacob?
Franchise tag.
Okay, no way we let him go, right?
No, yeah. Jacob's running around with that little yellow sticker gun. Just I'm tagging that man.
Like he does at the club. I'm gonna
absolutely.
tag the ear of this one. I'll tag the ear of that one. And keep it moving. Right?
Sometimes you got to mark them. You got to be able to tell them apart.
That's right.
Yeah, like from The Office, you got to.
I marked her arm. What?
Oh wow, we're getting a little back and forth in the chat there.
I know. I see some people are saying walk. AFAM, of course, he's going to say walk. AFAM, don't make us get your mom in here, sir. Okay, put your mother in here to straighten
You're late
you
for
out
your Chiefs
right
podcast.
Don't make us call on her. All right, AFAM.
Oh man,
Whoever's running that account, I need you in here ASAP. Okay,
Yeah.
It makes my knot every time, man. All right. Anything else on Zach Tom before we move on to Quay Walker extension talks?
I will handcuff him to the railing at 1265 if we have to. We are not letting that man out of Green Bay.
Jacob said you can borrow his handcuffs still.
Well,
I don't know if I want those. They might not have been sterilized.
They're quite fuzzy too, in pink.
Oh, God. With that being said, that's going to do it for hour one. For those of you listening on the pod, I'm sure we will not see you for hour two, but you're welcome to join us. See you on the other side.